chants that were made during apartheid that he's utilizing as something that was made over false claims of mass deaths, mass graves, and genocide against white Afrikaners. That is factually incorrect.
Unexpectedly played videos that Mr. Trump said proved his allegations that South Africa is committing genocide against white farmers there. The South African delegation pushed back, denying the debunked claim.
There's a small fringe group in this country of right-wing conspirators who push a false narrative of a white genocide. That's simply not true, as one Afrikaner commentator said.
In a nearby village home to farm workers, residents were shocked by false claims this was the site of a white genocide.
No white genocide. That was the line pounded by the mainstream outlets in the wake of the meeting that took place with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the lion's den known as Trump's White House. Instead of discussing the merits of the claims made by President Trump at that meeting, the media pounced on President Trump, playing a few videos for the South African president.
A diplomatic meeting turned ambush. America's Donald Trump makes incendiary comments about what it's like to be a white farmer in South Africa.
It seemed that Mr. Trump came to the office with the full understanding that there will be this ambush of the President Ramaphosa.
Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader inside the Oval Office.
South Africa's president also jumped on the bandwagon, completely dismissing EFF leader Julius Malema's call to kill the white farmers.
You know, that slogan, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, is a liberation chant and slogan. And it's not meant to be a message that elicits or calls upon anyone to go and be killed. And that is what our court decided. So they will probably want to arrest people willy-nilly. We follow the dictates of our constitution because we are a constitutional state and we are a country where freedom of expression is the bedrock of our constitutional arrangement.
Freedom of expression, that's funny. I want to use this historic moment to illustrate a concept called anarcho-tyranny. Anarcho-tyranny describes a state where law enforcement fails to maintain order, allowing crime and chaos to fester, while authorities simultaneously impose heavy restrictions on law-abiding citizens. This concept is becoming reality and has become more evident to Americans over the course of the last decade, stemming from the Ferguson riots under Obama, to the Summer of Love in 2020, to the Tesla burnings that you see today. Anarcho-tyranny describes a state where governments neglect core duties, like curbing crime or securing borders, while cracking down on citizens through overregulation, censorship, and mask mandates. South Africa is a prime example of anarcho-tyranny as a governing ideology. The staggering murder rate of 45 people per 100,000 compared to America's 6.5 people per 100,000. The United States, however, is quickly trying to keep pace to the chagrin of everybody. There's been a 70% surge in U.S. murders from 2014 to 2020. That's before Biden took over the presidency in 2021. Is the United States sliding faster than ever into anarcho-tyranny? Joining me now is the co-founder of American Tribune, Will Tanner. In his latest piece, the South Africanization of America is just beginning, and he discusses it in detail. Will, thanks for joining. Walk me through this piece and make your case. Why is America backsliding into what you call South Africanization, and why it's just the beginning?
Yeah, Vish, thanks for having me on. So my basic case in the piece is that South Africa is a crystal ball. It allows us to see what's coming next if we continue on this path. There are two basic elements to what I call the South Africanization of America. The first is anarcho-tyranny, or the idea that citizens are closely regulated by their government while criminals are allowed basically free rein by the same government. The other aspect of it is the total dysfunction, both economic, governmental, that's caused by race communism, or the idea that the government has this mandate for enforced racial egalitarianism that needs to make outcomes equal between all races, particularly to the disadvantage of whites. So you see this clearly in South Africa, where they have both the anarcho-tyranny angle of these farm attacks, 95% of which go unsolved, and the killers are often aided by the government. That's why you see those military-grade signal jammers. And in South Africa, they have a huge problem with carjackings, illegal mining gangs, squatters taking over farms, empowered by the government as they do so. And the state heavily regulates economic activity with black economic empowerment laws. Unfortunately, you're seeing the same anarcho-tyranny issue in America. Here, we've had Tren de Aragua take over swaths of cities, squatters, some of them illegal aliens, take over houses, no cash bail policies, turning violent criminals back out on the streets. And even the unsolved crime problem is an issue here. Kansas City, for example, has just a 33% homicide clearance rate, at least of 2023. And sadly, there's the murder aspect too. If you look at the slangs of Ethan Liming, Jonathan Lewis, and Austin Metcalf, along with countless others, it's quite similar, sadly. So we do have the anarcho-tyranny part, and our lives are heavily regulated as these criminals do whatever they want. The second aspect is the race communism part, causing massive economic dysfunction. In South Africa, Eskom, for example, because the BEE is unable to hire white employees mostly, and rolling blackouts are common there. The water utility has the same problem. Copper cable theft is out of control, adding to the issues. It's airlines, water utilities, rail lines, all of that is messes too. And it really gets to this BEE issue, this race communism issue. In America, sadly, we're seeing much the same thing. According to Bloomberg, in 2021, just 6% of new jobs went to white Americans. Disparate impact law, which is the law of the land in America, and makes it prima facie discriminatory and thus illegal to have employment tests that cause disparate outcomes between racial groups. All of that has led to this war on competence that has really made America experience similar economic government dysfunction to what you see in South Africa. So if you look at those trend lines, they're very much pointed in the wrong direction, and the same sort of things that causing that dysfunction in South Africa are causing it in America, quite sadly.
So you mentioned race communism. Why is it so important for the media and the ruling party in South Africa to say a genocide of white people is not happening? Why is that such a non-starter for them?
Yeah, so the pithy answer is because they want it to happen here. The more involved answer is that South Africa's dysfunction, particularly in the massive level of crime you see that's effectively a genocide, is proving the myth of the Rainbow Nation wrong. So if you look at South Africa's history, you have really the American government insisting that Mandela be made president. Mandela was a communist terrorist who founded a terror group called the MK, and he was in jail because of that. He helped the group carry out attacks by helping plan them while he was in prison. He was then released and put in charge by 1994. So the idea that he was going to create this paradise is just insane, but it was very much the message push that Mandela was going to turn South Africa, which was this backwards, racist place, into some kumbaya, post-racial state that was quite nice, was insane, but it was the message pushed by the government. And the genocide in South Africa is proving that wrong. It's proving the Rainbow Nation myth to just be completely made up. And what's the issue with that is they can't say that because they want the same thing to happen here. They want to bring that race communism here for the same purposes of revenge, power, and wealth extraction that is why they're doing it in South Africa. That's why Mandela's terrorist past is hidden. It's why he's been grafted onto the American civil rights movement as a hero. And it's why they're now so unwilling to admit the genocide that's going on in South Africa. And make no mistake, if you look at the intentional destruction of Afrikaner cultural heritage and current culture, along with the murder of them, there is a genocide going on. And that's why they're hiding it. It's because they want it to happen here. And that's very clear if you look at their rhetoric, their actions, and their ideology, along with what they've done to cover up the current crimes of South Africa and the crimes of Mandela.
The Afrikaners in South Africa are facing down expropriation of property without compensation. Now, we know the ruling party has leftist communist sympathies, but it seems to me that they're more animated by this element of anti-whiteness more than anything. Is that true? And is that the same anti-whiteness element prevalent in the American left and the Democratic Party today?
Yes, this is absolutely true. It's important to note that the ANC's current plan for land expropriation is quite similar to what Mugabe did in the early 2000s to steal the land of white farmers in Zimbabwe. It's the same thing, more or less, in how the government will affect it, and it's for the same reason, which is they want revenge. They hate this idea of colonialism having built the country. The Afrikaners were the ones who settled South Africa, particularly the Western Cape, when there's next to no one there. And the current government hates that. It hates the idea that they built that, and it wants to destroy it. It wants revenge. And so that's what you're seeing with the land expropriation. It's this final step in revenge where they're going to completely purge the Boers from the country, because Boer means farmer. The farmland is their roots, their cultural identity. So taking it will be a complete genocide of them. It will do away with them completely. Sadly, if you look at America, much the same is true here with that anti-white racism, that anti-colonial bias being the basis of what they're doing. A fabulous book on this is Jeremy Carl's The Unprotected Class. If you just look at what they're doing, it's motivated by anti-white racism.
And you know, I want to get to that, that it's happening in America, because in your piece, you list a particularly eye-popping allegation that the USDA had made 42,000 payments to random Black Americans as part of a reparations program enshrined in Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Are like reparations already the law in America?
Yes, they are. There was a bit of puffery there. It wasn't completely random, but other than that, it's entirely spot on. The reparations program was a USDA one created by Section 22007 of the Inflation Reduction Act, if you want to look it up. It's called the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program, and through it, reparations could be asked for through January 13th of 2024 if a farmer claimed that USDA refusal to give them a low-interest loan had led to the loss of their farmland. So between 42,000 and 43,000 primarily Black farmers were given reparations as part of the program. Around $2 billion was paid out, and Congress had initially tried to make a program like this that was entirely for Blacks. No other races could be considered. That was struck down, so they made it technically racially neutral, and some Hispanic and Native Americans did get grant or payments through it, but it was almost entirely for Black Americans. And unfortunately, it's not unlike South Africa's similar programs of taking land, taxing things, and giving it to Black farmers. It is a form of equity. So yes, we do have reparations. Yes, it was enshrined in the law. And yes, it was quite extensive.
Will Tanner of the American Tribune, thank you so much for informing our viewers of what's really going on in our country.
Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.